Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising. As we debrief on the Congressional hearing yesterday in the House of Representatives on UAP disclosure, there have been hearings on and off for many, many years in the Congress. The hearing last July with David Grush was of singular importance. There was a lot of anticipation for the hearing yesterday. We were told there were more people in line than any hearing that at least people could remember. So there was an overflow room that was put together for all the people that wanted to watch the proceedings. It was organized by the House Government Oversight Committee and specifically by two of the subcommittees on national security and cybersecurity. It was chaired by Representative Nancy Mace. There were four witnesses. One, Tim Gallaudet, Rear Admiral retired, the leading oceanographer of the U.S. Navy, who had not experienced UAP directly, but secondhand through a variety of his subordinates and reports and emails that he was privy to. He talked about the USOs, the unidentified submerged objects, which are gaining attention in the news. Lou Elizondo, the former director of the all-domain aerospace threat identification program in the Pentagon, whose book Imminent was a New York Times bestseller until very, very recently. Lou stated categorically that they're here, and that essentially echoing what Colonel Carl Nell said earlier in the year at a conference in New York, there is zero doubt. And that was a major statement. I think it was the clearest statement, at least to my recollection of any testimony in the Congress so far, about the incontrovertibility of the cosmic moment that humanity finds itself embarking upon. There was also Michael Schellenberger, a journalist, not very well known, but came to national and international attention actually only about 6 weeks ago when on a broadcast with Russ Coulthart, the Australian journalist on News Nation, Ross's program called Reality Check. Michael talked about the immaculate constellation, something that had been reported to him by a whistleblower whose identity he's kept absolutely secret, really stating that there is in the Pentagon a massive database and program that includes reverse engineering that is there, and it operates to the present day. Richard Dolan, the great UFO historian, points out that this was something that was told to various researchers years ago. Steve, if you want to turn off your video and put yourself on mute, that would be great. Let's see if I can do it here. There we go. And then finally, there was Michael Gold, who worked for NASA for many years and also for Bigelow Aerospace. He didn't create headlines with his testimony, but basically was affirming the existence of deep research and the importance of ongoing research. Many of the congressional representatives asked various questions. We'll get into that in a moment, but I want to first introduce Danny Sheehan, who's the president and general counsel of the New Paradigm Institute, a very old and dear friend for many years. And it was at Danny's request that I came back to Washington to head up the office here of the New Paradigm Institute. Danny's been at most of the hearings over the years, both in Congress and around Washington, D.C. And then we'll also hear from Steve Bassett, who's the founder of the Paradigm Research Group and one of the co-founders of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. Steve has also been present here in Washington. So we invited the two of them, both because of their history in attending hearings over the years, but also because of their very, very active work with the U.S. Congress on all matter of UAP disclosure-related issues. So we're going to start with Danny, and maybe if both of you can come on, and Steve, if you can open up your video and take yourself off mute. Danny, why don't we start from you and just give us a broad brush commentary on how you experienced the hearing yesterday.
Great, thanks, Jim. Well, this is the third hearing, actually, that Congress has recently convened on this issue of the UFOs in potential extraterrestrial pilots of the UFOs. There was an initial one 3 years ago. There was another one a year ago. And this is the one here for 2024. It's been this kind of ascending interest on the part of the members of Congress to respond to the fact that they have been lied to by the United States intelligence agencies and the Defense Department for decades about the existence of the UFO phenomenon. They've been told repeatedly in public and in private that there's no such thing as UFOs, that this is just a misperception of flocks of birds or Venus or swamp gas and other natural phenomena. And now, as of December of 2017, when Lou Elizondo, who was sort of the principal witness yesterday, came forward along with Chris Mellon, who was the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, came forward to the New York Times and acknowledged publicly that UFOs are real. And that the United States Pentagon has had this top secret program going, evaluating the phenomenon. What came out in 2023 in July with the testimony of David Grush is that not only has the Pentagon been secretly monitoring the UFO phenomenon, but the fact is that they have recovered a number of UFO craft, and that they've been engaged in this program of back engineering, reverse engineering the craft to try to develop a weapon system using the technology of the UFOs that would be exclusively available to the United States to supplement its war-making power. And what happened just recently in this hearing, they got the testimony of Schallenberger actually identifying the program in its code name, which is the Immaculate Constellation project. Now there was a kind of a misstatement in the hearing yesterday that the hearing was introducing a document showing the actual report that was filed on Immaculate Constellation. It actually came from Jeremy. What's his last name, Steve? Covell, Jeremy Covell, actually handed it to the committee. They inadvertently suggested that Schellenberger had given them the copy of it. He didn't. But the bottom line is there was introduced into the record a copy of a report that was actually filed in the Pentagon about Immaculate Constellation, which is just bringing up to date the code name, the code name for the program that was testified about a year ago, back in July of 2023, by David Grush. So, but in this hearing, for the first time, Lou Elizondo, I'm the attorney for Lou Elizondo. I helped him craft his complaint to the Defense Department's Inspector General that helped instigate a lot of the motion that's been going on now in Congress. And Lou has been one of the major players, one of the major drivers of this effort to get the Congress of the United States to respond. And so it was important that he come forward and testify under oath and answered key questions. For example, he explicitly confirmed the question that yes, there is in fact a secret program that the United States Defense Department is running, recovering extraterrestrial, non-human origin spacecraft. And he also asserted for the first time under oath, yes, this program also entails the recovering of bodies of non-human creatures or beings, actually, that are piloting these craft. He said it under oath, and as the director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. This was a first, actually, that even though David Grush asserted that he'd been told about this in the past, Lou Elizondo was the first one that could come and testify that he has direct personal knowledge of this. And that was brought out from questions from the panel. So that and Lou Elizondo went on to actually assert that based on all the information that he now has firsthand knowledge about, that he says that it's clear that we are not alone in the cosmos. So he's actually making reference to an extraterrestrial life form or species that is coming and going from the planet. And he also answered questions stating that there was a high degree of interest on the part of the UFO beings in our nuclear weapons capacities, that there seemed to be a great deal of concern on their part about the existence of the thermonuclear weapons and missiles that could actually destroy the entire life-generating capacity of our planet. So those are things that for people who were not familiar with this entire area, which of the tens of thousands of people that were viewing this hearing live yesterday, this probably did come as quite a shock to learn about all this. Those of us who've been familiar with this, that I've been in this particular field for approximately 50 years, dating all the way back to 1977 when President Carter asked to have an investigation of the UFO phenomenon and its potential connection to extraterrestrial life. This has been going on behind the scenes for 50 years. So that this was the most forward-leaning public hearing that Congress has ever had, explicitly acknowledging that the United States government is in possession of non-human origin extraterrestrial space vehicles and the bodies of a non-human species, which is extraterrestrial in nature. So that's quite an advance in the data that is available to the vast number of people around the country. We haven't yet seen how the New York Times is going to cover this, but that Reuters was covering the hearings, that these hearings have been covered globally. So that what we want to see is the quote mainstream press, how the mainstream press are going to respond to this in order to get the information out to even more people than actually watched it live. And of course, it's up on C-SPAN. It was broadcast on C-SPAN. It's going to be up on YouTube, and so that there are probably a dozen different sources from which people can view the entire 2 hour and 17-minute hearing and get the live testimony. And they'll be able to hear it a lot better than we did, who were in the hearing room, because the recordings of the media are much more immediate and discernible. So people should all tune to this. Anybody here of the hundreds of people who are here listening today who didn't happen to get to see it yet, you should go to one of the main sources for it and watch the entire 2 hours and 17 minutes and hear the exact questions that were asked. And in closing, I'll say that there clearly has been an increase in the intensity and level of interest on the part of the members of Congress to get the information now. And it's important to note this is now in the context of the new administration that's going to be coming in. The Trump administration is coming in with majority control in the Senate, majority control in the House of Representatives. So if in fact President-elect Trump is going to keep his word that he has pronounced several times in the course of his campaign, that he's intending to release all of the information about the UFO phenomenon and the ET phenomenon to the public virtually immediately after he's inaugurated. We have advocated at the New Paradigm Institute that he, take care here by engaging Congress in this process, that he basically, by executive order, could establish the very panel that the Schumer-Rounds bill passed by the United States Senate last year asked to have set up. And so hopefully they'll set up a panel to design a UFO controlled disclosure campaign plan so that we can roll this out in a careful and responsible way. At the same time, we reach out to take the steps necessary to adjust our geopolitical system, our domestic economic system, our religious institutions to try to absorb this new reality. That this is clearly a moment similar to the Copernican revolution, where we, as a human family, realized that the universe did not surround us from our central point at the center of the entire universe. And now this is the next step in the elevation of the consciousness of our human family as humanity rises, dare I say, to a new level of consciousness that is hopefully more peaceful and can follow the requests of the ET people asking that we jointly eliminate the nuclear weapons. This is not an effort on their part, I am absolutely convinced, to try to just get us to get rid of nuclear weapons because they're afraid that we'll use nuclear weapons against them. I think their vehicles are virtually impervious to any of that being hit by nuclear missiles. So, I think that's extraordinarily important. This is a very important step. And I believe that after the inauguration on January 20th of President-elect Trump, if he keeps his word and takes immediate steps to start revealing this to the public, we want to make sure that the American citizens stick with this to make sure that this process is handled responsibly and that we take the steps necessary to adjust all of our various human institutions to effectively absorb this new information and to establish a constructive and mutually beneficial relationship with the extraterrestrial civilization that we now know surrounds us.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you very much. Steve Bassett, why don't you come in and give us your comment on what happened yesterday?
Morning, Jim and everyone else. I'm going to wax poetic here a little bit because there are people that are not happy with that hearing yesterday. They're voicing themselves on the social media, and I get it. That was the case with the last hearing. Every major truth and justice activist movement in history has one thing in common. you are climbing a mountain, and it's not easy. And the difference between one movement and another is how steep the mountain is. It can take a long time. Martin Luther King, I think, perfectly spoke to this in a very famous speech where he said he had been to the mountaintop and seen the other side. This speech was in April of 1968. Within just a couple of months, the Civil Rights Act was passed. In other words, once you get to the top of the mountain, the way down the other side is way fast. All right. Sometime between now and 2017, exactly which moment, I don't know. We can argue about it. We got to the top of the mountain, and we've been heading down the other side very, very fast. Slowed down a little bit during that 7-year period. A few things happened. All right. Not long after the articles in the New York Times, which is, I think, the beginning of this period I'm referring to, we entered into one of the most awful pandemics in human history, a worldwide massive disruption of just about every aspect of society. And we got through that. Before that was over, a frighteningly new war began in Europe, right, with all kinds of dangers. Many other things were happening. And of course, there was political upheaval in many countries, including our own. And so it's the road down the other side of the mountain kind of been slowed down, but we're practically there. And so I view this hearing in that context. It was amazing. You had people lined up at 4 a.m, including me. They put extra seats in there because they knew it was going to be a big crowd. This time it was filmed live by C-SPAN. I don't think it was the first time. Also Scripps News and a number of other, I think, entities. So it was seen by perhaps millions. As I was sitting in the hearing, there were people that were using their Twitter accounts to live stream it, right? Literally from their accounts. That was going on. And just to point to how things are these days, there were people in the audience who, because they had the proper phone number, were texting members of the committee with questions they would like them to ask, who then proceeded to ask the question that had just been tweeted to them or X to them, whatever the hell you want to call it, by a member of the audience. When various luminaries showed up, like James Fox and others, they were greeted in the halls with enthusiasm. They were swarmed with people wanting to get their photo with them and what have you, autograph. All right. The energy in the hall was extraordinary. It was powerful. And then there was this moment, and I was wondering what would happen. When the 4 witnesses walked in to the room to sit down at the table, this did not happen a year ago. The audience broke out in substantial applause, and that applause was being seen by everybody watching that hearing around the world. These kind of things are bigger than you might think. And so the hearing continued a process of information and engaging the public, and absolutely advanced the disclosure process. But one of the things that I think people are struggling with, I say some people are struggling with, is we have 2 audiences for these events. One are those like myself and Danny and you and many others who have been involved in this issue for years and decades. We're very knowledgeable. We know the history. We know what's going on. And we have certain interests and desires. We want this to happen and that to happen and so forth. But that's not the audience that these hearings are really targeting. Not at all. They're targeting the other 320 million people that aren't us in the country, and bringing them up to speed, getting them involved, letting them see what's going on in preparation for what's coming. As I've said many, many times, these hearings and other things along these lines are not about we're going to tell you what's going on now. We're going to reveal this to you. We want you to know disclosure. No, that's not what they're about. They are about preparing the public, getting the Congress ready, getting the media ready for what inevitably where this goes. And that's formal confirmation by head of state. You can't just have the head of state walk out one day and say, I've had enough of this and I'm telling you the truth. No, it's just too big. Too many entities and institutions involved. It is a preparation process. And in that regard, it is doing what it's supposed to do in spite of significant disruptions coming from various sectors. So this was a major step forward. Now, I had the privilege of speaking with one of the members of Congress for 40 minutes. It was wonderful, very impressed. And I learned that there are more hearings coming without a doubt. And one of the reasons I was focused on yesterday was getting Captain Bob Salas into a hearing, right, and possibly meeting with a member of Congress. That happened, right? I have submitted affidavits of all the nuclear witnesses to quite a few people. And so we're well along the way where a hearing coming up is going to have in front of it 1, 2, 3, 4 former Air Force officers who were firsthand witnesses to the shutdown of nuclear missiles. That's going to be quite a hearing as well. So we're making extraordinary progress. Then the last thing I want to say is this. There's still quite a bit of time between now and the next administration, the next president taking over and the next Congress taking over. I think it's like 51 days. There is still time for the current administration, the current Congress, to hold the necessary hearing that will involve the appropriate witnesses in order to set the stage for a president to disclose. I'm not going to stop trying to get that happening. Why? Because I believe that getting that done and getting us into the post-disclosure world very much benefits the next administration, who will then be able to directly start dealing with post-disclosure issues, as opposed to having this thing hanging over their head, swirling around as it has been for so many decades. But if we don't get that hearing, based upon what I've heard and the articles that I'm following, it looks very promising that the next administration will proceed and proceed quickly, in which case that administration and that president will launch the post-disclosure world, and that is fine with me.
Thank you, Stephen. I want to turn to a matter that permeated the entire hearing, and that is the reticence of any of the 4 witnesses to speak openly and freely about what they actually know. Lou Elizondo, on a couple of occasions, said that he had signed a specific statement saying that he would not ever talk about reverse engineering, even when pressed. And so I want to take this up, beginning with you, Danny, but I want to do it in the following way. I want to bring in what happened to Jack Teixeira a couple of days ago, a 22-year-old soldier who, as a matter of conscience, released classified information revealing that the U.S. government was lying to the American and world public about Ukraine, telling the public that, in fact, the Ukrainians were going from victory to victory, but the reality, according to the Pentagon, is that the Ukrainians were losing badly, something that much of the alternative media already knew and was talking about. He was given 15 years in a high security prison. So the whistleblower phenomenon, in whether it's with someone like Teixeira, someone like UAP, is a real phenomenon, with the government having extraordinary powers to coerce silence. And you saw that coercive presence in the room yesterday, and something that was commented on by a number of people. So starting with you, Danny, I'd like to just have you, you've the one who defended Dan Ellsberg. You've defended whistleblowers from Dan Ellsberg to Lou Elizondo. So the reality, the complexities of someone who, as a matter of conscience, wants to tell the truth, but as a matter of law, as a matter of what the government can do with or without the law, there's extraordinary impediments. And I know that you were the principal drafter of legislation on whistleblowers that was submitted to the U.S. Congress. So talk to us a bit about this whistleblower phenomenon and why it's so important to assist in the accelerating disclosure that Steve was just talking about.
Right. Yeah. The bottom line that people need to understand among our citizenry is that the United States is in fact a national security state since 1947. At the end of World War II, there was a law passed called the National Security Act of 1947, and it established a national security state here in the United States. It set up the Central Intelligence Agency. It authorized the Central Intelligence Agency, in their own eyes at least, to not only collect intelligence against all of the other nation states around the world, to allegedly protect the national security of the United States. It was understood by the people in the Central Intelligence Agency. There was a section of the National Security Act, Section 5412, that said that the CIA shall be also authorized to carry out additional activities at the request of the president. And what happened is the Central Intelligence Agency viewed that as authorizing them to engage in what they refer to benignly as kinetic activities, which is covert activities, which evolved over time to end up overthrowing democratically elected governments, assassinating foreign leaders, supporting death squads in foreign countries that would search out people in the universities and in lawyers and others who were protecting people who were critical of that government, supporting fascist governments all through Central America and in Africa, and stoking, under the guise of anti-communism, stoking fascist governments in Europe. That what's happened is the Central Intelligence Agency has gotten completely out of control. In fact, even before leaving office, Truman, who signed the law in 1947, said that he's become gravely disappointed that the fact that the Central Intelligence Agency has now gotten out of control and has started to dictate policy to the country as a national security state. So we are going to have to come to grips with this. If there are going to be positive things derived from a Trump administration that is upset about illegitimate excesses that have been engaged in under the auspice of government authority, that this area of the national security state is one of them, okay? That this whole idea that a national security state can actually prosecute you and put you in prison if you reveal information which they unilaterally choose to declare to be a state secret without any review process at all. And if you tell anybody, if you've agreed to a national, not only if you've signed a non-disclosure agreement or taken a national security oath, that they can imprison you and put you in prison for 50 years or for the rest of your life. You know, it has gone so far as, and people don't realize this, it has gone so far as to authorize the passing of a United States Defense Department regulation, which has now been put into law as part of the National Defense Authorization Act, that the President of the United States can declare any American citizen to be a potential threat to the national security of the United States, and can be arrested by military officials in the United States, put in front of a military tribunal, and sentenced to a military prison without any review by any court in the country. Now, most people don't know that, okay? But this is the kind of power that has been acquired by the national security state bureaucracy in the country. And it's important for you to understand that this issue of the existence on our planet of an extraterrestrial number of species from our own galaxy in piloting the UFOs has been the deepest secret in the entire national security state closet for decades, since July of 1947. And the bottom line is that the people in the national security state have deemed themselves authorized initially to deploy lethal force to protect the physical facilities where these UFO vehicles.
You put yourself on mute, Danny. Somehow you put yourself on
sorry.
mute.
Okay.
There we go.
The national security state apparatus has taken unto itself and given itself the authority to deploy lethal force to protect the physical facilities where the UFO vehicles have been captured and kept, and where they're trying to back engineer or reverse engineer these UFO craft to develop weapons systems for the United States. They view this as the most deeply held secret and have been allowed to deploy lethal force to protect those facilities. Those national security state agents believe that they are now authorized to utilize lethal force, even off-site, to protect the secrecy of this particular secret. And in fact, they have imposed upon a certain select element of people in our government a security oath in which they have to consent to being assassinated without any judicial review, without any judicial protection, if they violate their security oath pertaining to this particular secret. So you can imagine the depth of fear that exists among the people who hold the closest secrets in this particular realm, okay? Because they can be shot down on the street. They can be run down by a flower truck. They can, fall in their tub and die of a broken neck. Or they could be like Danny Casolaro, found in a tub, a bathtub with all the tendons in both of his arms completely severed, believing that he's committed suicide. That this is true. And people need to understand this. Okay, so that the bottom line is one of the major agenda items for a new Trump administration has to be to disassemble the national security state apparatus here in the United States government to return our government to a constitutional democracy. Now, that is not going to jeopardize us in the eyes of other countries of the world, because one of the things that we need to do is reach out to establish greater alliances with all the other nation states of the world, including Russia, including China, including India, in the other countries. We need to establish a planetary-wide alliance of how we as a human family are going to interact with this extraterrestrial civilization to protect our own human agency here. Okay, that if we are going to be joining into an alliance with civilizations that may have existed for 2, 3, or 4 billion years, longer than our civilization, we have to protect our own agency, not by engaging in military preparations against them or trying to establish them as a hostile military power, but just to understand that we have to protect our own agency as a species here. Okay, and now this is a profoundly important agenda that it needs to be taken up by our government, by our citizens, most importantly. That's why the New Paradigm Institute is dedicated to trying to educate the people of our country about not only the secrets that have been kept pertaining to the existence and the presence here on our planet of an extraterrestrial set of species and the reality of the UFO phenomena, but to start to disassemble not only the national security state apparatus here in our country, but also persuade Russia and China and the other countries that have attempted to copy this national security state agenda. Or if you want to even be more open to less controversial arguments, even if they have their own national security state agenda. That we've got to get the countries of our planet to disassemble their national security state apparatuses and join together as a planetary civilization to interact with this extraterrestrial species in civilization in our galaxy. That's what has to happen here. If you want to have an important, positive, constructive, upward, positive, forward, constructive agenda for this administration, that if they're going to be restructuring the executive branch of our country, one of the major primary objectives of it should be this. And this is what Trump has, if you could get him adequately educated on what the deep state actually is. The deep state is a lot more than just the bureaucracy of tens of thousands of people in executive agencies who have taken unto themselves too much authority to make discretionary judgments. The actual deep state is this national security state, okay? And that it has risen to the point of threatening American citizens with death, and destruction of their family lives, of their careers, of their general reputations, if they so much as try to tell people about their direct encounter with a UFO. This is constitutionally unacceptable. Okay, so as a constitutional attorney, I find it to be my obligation, in addition to my being the co-founder of the New Paradigm Institute, to help bring this new paradigm into operation here in our country, a new paradigm pursuant to which we are not a national security state, in which we prevail upon other nation states in the world to take down their national security state boundaries and institutions, so that we can combine as a human family to engage in a positive and constructive, and as I said, mutually beneficial relationship with the extraterrestrial civilization that surrounds us. And so this issue of the whistleblowers being threatened with not just the revocation of their security clearance, but even the potential termination if they violate their security clearances with regard to this highly sensitive issue, is an issue that has to be taken up by Congress. Now, our New Paradigm Institute drafted at the request of the House of Representatives that a comprehensive UFO whistleblower protection statute. It's the gold standard for how you really protect these people, and it needs to be passed by Congress. Okay, it's in the possession of Congressman Bassett. He requested that we provide the gold standard for such a protection. He had conversations, as we understand it, with the Speaker of the House, Michael Johnson, who had previously agreed that if there were a comprehensive whistleblower protection statute crafted narrowly for UFO whistleblowers, that he would allow that to be taken to the floor for a vote. That has to be done. But we, as the citizens of our country, have to mobilize to get that done. So that's a first step in getting the UFO whistleblowers protected, so that they can come forward and give the Congress the information that they need to have to start to prepare this new paradigm regime here in our country and on our planet. These are profound issues, and make no mistake about the seriousness of what it is that we're talking about here today. Usually, with Ubiquity, there's a lot of very positive, uplifting, consciousness-raising discussions that go on. This one today is of a little bit darker nature. Because we're talking about the entire future of our human civilization here, and that you saw the rumblings of this in the hearing yesterday, that the people coming forward saying such extraordinary things under oath that Lou Elizondo said, we are not alone in the cosmos. The evidence that they have now in possession of the United States government convinces anyone who knows what that information is that we're not alone in the cosmos. And that we have to push back against Ogles, I think his name was, Congressman Ogles, who came in at the very end trying to whip up fear about the UFO phenomena. Aren't they a threat to our national security? Don't they represent a technology which, if it ever were to fall into the hands of our adversaries here on our planet, could be used against us? That whole kind of fear-mongering, war-mongering stuff. I don't want to generate any enemies, even Ogles. But what I'm saying is that national security state mentality has got to be overcome by our citizens. And only our citizens will be able to do this, because I don't think that the actual members of Congress are going to have the courage to actually confront this national security state unless the citizens rise up and demand that they do it. And if they do not respond to the demand of our people, that they be replaced by other representatives who will, in fact, come to the Congress and start to disassemble this national security state, and at the same time, reach out to the other countries of our planet to get them to do the same. And that's what's going to result in the disassembling of the nuclear warheads, so that we can take ourselves out from under the pall of this, 75-year threat of total thermonuclear destruction of our human civilization. Just to be clear about what it is that we're talking about, that has to be done here. And it all is going to be able to take place under the aegis of this UFO disclosure process.
Thank you, Danny. That was very comprehensive. Thank you so much for that. Steve, what would be your comment on the whistleblower matter and the reticence of the witnesses to disclose, given what Danny just detailed? How do you view this?
Well, I'll speak. Let me speak directly to your basic question, which was there were a number of instances where the witnesses could not speak in a public fashion. They could speak in a skiff and so forth, and these come up. They've always come up in these hearings. I just want to speak to that in general terms. With not many exceptions, every activist movement in history has generally had to achieve its desired outcome within the context of the system, society, structures that it existed in. There have been occasions when, for whatever reason, they felt, or it was felt necessary to obliterate the structures that existed and thus pave the way to get the outcome. There's a name for that. It's called revolution. And they tend to often be a little bloody and sometimes very destructive, but sometimes they're necessary. What you're seeing now, and have been for some time, is an effort to get towards the goal, which is first confirmation of the ET presence. That's the fundamental goal. There are many other goals: restructuring our society, ending all kinds of abuses, and so forth. That I've always felt would be easier in a post-disclosure world. So, in some cases, they under the quote legal strictures that exist, they're unable to say this or say that. But when they can speak, they do. And the simplest, I think, example of this is DOPSR, the Defense Office of Pre-Publication Security and Review. This is a thing they set up so that if you are a classified person and you're going to be speaking publicly at a press conference and what have you, you need to run everything by them, and then they will let you know what you can say or not say. Okay, fine. Some people will say, well, that's just terrible and it's awful. But interestingly enough, with not many exceptions, I think everything that you're hearing from particularly the military witnesses, certainly Grush and others, has been run by DOPSR and obviously been cleared. That includes Lou Elizondo's book, Eminent. And so while there are things that are still not approachable yet, at least in the public sector, there's an ever increasing amount of information that is being allowed forward. And so in that sense, what you're seeing is people who were trying to achieve the fundamental goal, which is to get this embargo ended by working within the actual structures that exist and that they're being allowed to do. And it's clear that whatever the military intelligence complex is, or the deep state is, it is yielding to this movement. Is it fast enough? I kind of think, well, right now it's fast enough. Could they suddenly jump back in and try to exert serious problems or control? Yeah, it could happen. So that's how I view it. So I'm not uncomfortable every time they say, look, I cannot speak to that in a public setting. I'm assuming they are speaking to it in a private setting and that the members of Congress are getting this information. In fact, I know that's the case. They've been getting what we'll call privately briefed information from various people for several years now. So the education of the Congress is clearly growing and growing, and their understanding of some of the issues that Danny has just mentioned, I think, is also improving. That could hopefully lead to a peaceful, nonviolent reform of the major problems that this country faces in that genre. At least that is my hope. That's my answer for that. Thank you.
I would add one thing to this. Sure. It was important to note, and I think it was kind of a special kind of lawyer perception from what was happening. Is you'll recall that there were a number of questions that were asked to for example, Lou and to the admiral, and even to the NASA guy who have national security clearances, where they were able to answer those questions. Because as you were pointing out, Stephen, that had been cleared by DOPSR. They had been cleared to talk about that. Then there was a second category of information that was said that, you asked me that question. I can't answer it in public, but I can answer it if we get together privately, for example, in a SCIF, because you have national security clearances and we have national security clearances. We can tell you about that. But you'll remember that Burleson asked a couple of questions of Lou when he said, look, if in fact I were to be able to meet with you in a SCIF privately, can you provide information to me that would definitively prove that there is an extraterrestrial presence here and that the UFOs are real? Could you provide that information to me there? And Lou said, I would not be authorized to allow you for me to answer that question. That would be for someone else to have to answer. I wouldn't be able to. So that's a third category of information that was highlighted yesterday. And I think almost nobody noticed it because they simply probably thought that fell under, well, we've got to go to a SCIF to tell you about that. But they were really being told right directly. The Congress of the United States was being told right directly that I can't and won't tell you that information, even if you have a security clearance, okay? Because there's other people above me that are prohibiting me from doing that. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. That is what we're going to have to come to grips with. The United States Congress cannot tolerate the executive branch garnering unto itself the authority to keep secrets from Congress that has the responsibility for governing our country, okay? That if you understand Article 2 of the Constitution, the President of the United States, his office is there to enforce the laws that are passed by Congress. They are there to implement the policies of the laws that are passed by Congress. They're not there to make up laws themselves. And they're not there to try to garner unto themselves some theory of the national security of the United States, which just coincidentally happens to put them into absolute positions of power and authority, even over the Congress of the United States. That is not the Constitution of the United States. Okay, that's something else. And it's what we rejected in the Revolutionary War. There is no ultimate authority that has got power over the Congress of our United States. All right? And that if President-elect Trump professes to believe that. He professes to believe that the executive branch agencies have gotten completely out of control, that they think that they're able to make up laws themselves and go way beyond whatever it is they've been authorized by Congress to do. In fact, the United States Supreme Court, that has been largely framed by Trump, has said the same thing in the Chevron doctrine, that they've actually said, that unless Congress has been very specific to authorize an executive branch agency to do something that has a profoundly important impact upon the culture and upon the economy of our country, they cannot be deemed to have been authorized to do that unless Congress explicitly gives them the authority to do that. Okay, so even the conservative Supreme Court of the United States and even Donald Trump have agreed with the principle that I'm saying. What we've got to do is get that applied to the national security state.
Yeah.
And I think in this particular context of the UFO phenomenon, which is so profoundly important to the people of our entire planet and of our entire future as a species for the next 10,000 years, determining what our policies are going to be and our relationship is going to be with the extraterrestrial galaxy here. This is something that has to be done now. It has to be done now because this issue is unfolding. And our people need to be mobilized. They need to be conscientized. They need to have our consciousness raised to the point where we intervene, okay, to make sure that the Congress of the United States does the job that we elected it to do. And if they won't do it, the other people need to be taking their place, okay? And we need to mobilize to make that happen right now. We've got an upcoming 2-year period between now and when the next Congress of the United States is chosen, both the House and the Senate. You know, a third of all the senators will be chosen, you know, in 2026. Every single one of the members of Congress will be up for election, again, the House of Representatives. So we need to mobilize in this 2-year period to insist that this administration, administrative inside the Congress and with the executive branch and the Supreme Court, move together to protect the Constitution of the United States and to protect our people against a national security state run amok that is trying to make war with each other countries all the time, and try to establish full military dominance over the planet, you know, threatening nuclear war, threatening the deployment of US nuclear missiles to support our continued privileged access to the strategic raw materials that are deemed to be necessary for the enrichment of our corporations. We've got to get control over this, okay? And we have a 2-year period here within which to do it, to see whether our congressional representatives in the Senate and the House are going to do their job. You know, period. Because for many of them, that's the only thing they respond to. They don't respond to the public interest. They don't respond to the kind of public outcry of the people unless they think that somehow their individual seat in the Congress is at risk. Well, we're serving notice that their seats are all at risk unless they do what's necessary to protect us right now with genuine, not just national security, but planetary security, so that we can protect our own human agency as we move into partnership and relationship with an extraterrestrial civilization. And for them to just simply be lying about it and pretending it's not even there so they can get access to their craft, to back engineer the craft so they can make weapons to threaten Russia or China, you know, because they happen to have a different economic policy, you know, is got to stop. It's got to stop, and it's got to stop now. But we've got to start now mobilizing the citizenry. That's what the New Paradigm Institute is here for. That's what the courses they're being taught in tandem with the New Paradigm Institute and Ubiquity University, to raise people's consciousness, to be able to have the information that you need to have in order to talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family members, you know, talk to your people that you went to school with in high school or college, you know, mobilize right now. We've got to get control of this issue to protect ourselves and to protect our entire human family at this point in time.
Thank you, Danny. This leads into the final question I want to pose to both of you, and I'm going to start with you first this time, Steve. One of the ironies, the supreme ironies of history, may be that Donald Trump becomes the disclosure president. And I want to raise this in the following way. We've just finished one of the most polarized elections in our nation's history. Many people believe that Donald Trump has, as we've seen from his appointments so far in only the last few days since he's been elected, that he's embarking on a rampage against America in a very fundamental way, stripping down the administrative state, etc. One of the unique characteristics of the UAP disclosure movement is that it's been intensely bipartisan. And this was something that was mentioned even yesterday, as it was in the hearing last July. This may be the only issue that is truly bipartisan. You know, it's one thing to be bipartisan in a Democratic White House and majority in the Senate to work with the Trumpers on the other side. It's another thing to be brought into an administration that may be taking dynamic steps toward disclosure. And I'd like to have both of you comment on the disposition of mind and heart that is required for progressives in the UAP disclosure movement to maintain as we start to interact with an administration that we hold anathema. It's going to be an extraordinary discipline of our psycho-emotional bodies. So, Steve, why don't you take a cut at it first, and then Danny, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Yes, one of the most important takeaways, I think, from the hearing, and the first one, but both happened both times, is that several of the members went out of their way to emphasize how bipartisan this issue is. I think it's the most bipartisan issue and nonpartisan issue, rather, both in that there's nothing else like it. And somewhat assisted by this recent conversation I had with a member of Congress, but I always sort of knew it, is that one, the members of Congress, very few of them are happy with the situation that exists, which didn't just turn up yesterday. The dysfunction that we're seeing, the huge partisan gridlock we're seeing, it is decades and decades in the making. You can't simply lay that on a single individual. It has made their lives very difficult. They're not happy about it, but they almost have no choice. In other words, if you're unhappy with the idea that it takes you have to raise $10 or $15 million to win a House seat, you're not happy about that, but you don't have any choice. The system has gotten to the point where that's what you've got to do. And there's a lot of other things. They really would like to see a return to civility and so forth, but they're locked into this dysfunction, which was, again, decades in the building. Okay. So one of the reasons I think you're seeing some of these members really pointing this out is that they legitimately, as Danny and I think I've pointed out for some time, this issue has the power and the scope to lead us out of the darkness and into the light. This may be the vehicle that will allow them to move forward, work together, achieve substantial results, lots of accolades from the public, and then make it much more easy to address other issues of lesser magnitude in a bipartisan way. So in that sense, the issue itself has that benefit and many other benefits. And so that is an important takeaway. Now, in terms of who is the disclosure president, it doesn't matter. That's for sure. History will look back and go, so what? Secondly, whoever the disclosure president is, if it's one of ours, it could be another head of state, by the way. Every other head of state will back it almost immediately, and it'll be a global thing. And so I am not concerned about disclosure happening under the next administration. And once that administration is fully in place, I will be happy to work with anybody in it, any member of Congress of either side, to continue to achieve that goal. And I'm glad that this is my issue, I can assure you, because those who have been having to climb the mountain that was a very partisan mountain, God bless them. Thank God I am not one of those climbers.
Good. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Danny,
I'd like to expand upon what Steve has said, is that this issue is not only the preeminent nonpartisan, actively bipartisan issue in the United States Congress. It is the most preeminent bipartisan issue between and among nation states. Every single nation
Good.
has the same objective of trying to figure out how our human family is going to be able to relate to the extraterrestrial civilization. The sub-problems of them having conflicts with each other, especially the sub-problem of them trying to get at the technology of the craft in order to build a military weapons program to be able to use against other members of our human family, just because they're in a different nation state, or they have a different economic theory, or they happen to disagree with regard to the power of the governments versus the individual in the state. These are things that we have to overcome this kind of dialectic, not only in our House of Representatives and Senate, but also between and among all of our nation states. This is the preeminent nonpartisan issue that working together can help bring us together. Now, everybody thinks the people on the other side ought to make the concessions in their direction whenever you have this effort to work in coalition. But the bottom line is that for the liberals and the progressives in this particular instance, it's going to be very difficult for them to participate in a program that they think is going to give credit to Donald Trump or to his acolytes. Okay. The same thing would have been true if Kamala Harris had won, that the people over on the Trump side would have found it totally distasteful to try to do anything to cooperate with the Kamala Harris administration. We in the UFO disclosure movement have to try to be the leaven in the bread of unification of our country and of our planet. I mean, that's really a major part of our calling, is to try to overcome the kind of false dialectic that sets in around differences in opinion. Okay, we have to make sure that doesn't paralyze the UFO disclosure movement, so that people do not become competitive with each other in challenging each other or saying negative things about other groups that are all working toward the same objectives. We have to be able to demonstrate the actual thing that we're advocating. Okay, and we have to do it with regard to the liberal community and the progressive community being able to work constructively and in a positively friendly manner with people in the Trump administration on this issue, and on the issue of disclosure. And as I've noted, that I think this disclosure movement has to expand to try to deal with the larger national security state problem that we have, which is the so-called deep state problem. And to really get it understood, as I mentioned, that the deep state is not just, in fact, the bureaucracy that's in every one of the executive agencies, it's the national security state. That's what people are afraid of everywhere. That's the thing that you can't speak above a whisper about this in Washington, because everybody knows that it's true. Okay, that they will send millions of dollars of covert money into your campaign and unseat you if you say anything negative about them. This is what happened to Senator Frank Church from Idaho when he chaired the Church Committee and revealed all lots of the nasty secrets about the Central Intelligence Agency. It happened to Senator Frank Church from Iowa when he opposed the Central Intelligence Agency's covert operations in Africa. It happened to Birch Bayh in Indiana, who opposed the Central Intelligence Agency. This activity on the part of the national security state apparatus, the Central Intelligence Agency's operations directorate, to mount warfare against members of our Congress, and the FBI to spy on members of Congress and to blackmail them with sexual escapades that they engage in, etc. This has got to be brought into the light, and it's got to be stopped right now. And I think we can legitimately approach this larger problem through the window of the UFO disclosure process, because of the kind of lengths to which the national security state has gone to violate the rights of citizens and Congress in keeping this secret. Okay, so I think that the bipartisan nature of this is going to call upon the people who are out of power at the present time, the liberals and the progressives, to come back into service with the government, work constructively with members of the Trump administration, and try to take advantage of some of the belief systems that they share in common. Okay, and one of them is the protection of the Constitution of the United States. Okay, that's what we have to do. So I think this is the people wondered why I'm involved in this particular issue after all the years that I've spent, challenging the Central Intelligence Agency in South America, or challenging the Defense Department in the Vietnam War, and representing the New York Times to get the Pentagon Papers published. This is a perfectly correct place for us to be right now, in trying to work together to bring our political party members together, our people of our country together, the people of our planet together. This is an opportunity to overcome some of the character flaws that our human family has been victim of down through the decades. So I see this as an extraordinary opportunity, even though it's fraught with challenges. I think that we can rise to this occasion, but we have to do this as the citizens of our country. That's what the New Paradigm Institute is about. That's why we've established the relationship with Ubiquity University to help raise the consciousness of our people. That's why we're joining together with the Mutual UFO Network to try to reach out to the people in every congressional district. That's why we want to reach out to people like the UAP Disclosure Fund, to SOL, to other citizens groups that are all working together in this, and not be competitive, but be supportive of each other's efforts. Okay, so that's the I think what's so important about the opportunity presented by this issue.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Steve. That'll do it for us for today, everyone. This is a remarkably poignant moment in our history when disclosure about the most important information in the history of our species is coming to light. The advent of a president that most of us would prefer not to be associated with, and yet everything is just being brought together in amalgamation that's going to try our souls. But if we navigate through, it will expand our souls and give us the capacity, possibly for the first time in the history of our kind, to embrace all matter of diversity toward the common goal of transformation. So thank you, gentlemen. This has been a remarkably illuminating dialogue with you. You're welcome to join the after chat. You'll see the link in the chat box. You received the link in your Zoom reminder for today. And then tomorrow, we're going to be going to New Zealand to a woman who has mastered the arts of traditional Welsh and Maori medicine and healing. And in that elixir between West and East, she has derived a new form of healing that we want to bring to the attention of our community. So thank you, Danny. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you all. See you tomorrow.
Terrific, Danny. Thank you so much, Jim. Thanks.